There's three main sections when using justifying factors to add value when setting up a potential endorsement rewrite. Now let's review section number 1. Adding value by making changes on the drivers. Now number 1, adding a young driver. You're always going to emphasize on the fact that a young driver is a potential high risk, and maybe processing the endorsement is not going to be the best option simply because they may offer too much. So a new option may be the best solution simply because, once again, it's a high risk. A lot of companies don't want to offer the best deals for young drivers due to the lack of experience. Number 2, adding a driver with a matricula when the drivers on the policy have a California license. So you're always going to use this as a way of justifying why a new policy, a new business policy, may be the better option. Number 3, adding a driver that doesn't have a license or a matricula. The only thing they have, it's a California ID. Now there's a lot of companies that actually don't offer coverage for someone that has an ID only. Technically, someone that has an ID only should be able to get their license. So offering a new policy may be the solution simply because the company that they have may not offer coverage for someone that only has the ID. Number 4, adding a driver with multiple violations or accidents. So after qualifying, after investigating, even possibly after running the information, you determine that the new driver that they want to add, they have multiple violations, multiple accidents. So you're going to justify that adding that driver with multiple violations may not be the best thing. Setting up a new policy with a company that's more flexible on violations and tickets and accidents may be the solution. Number 5, adding a driver that doesn't live under the same address. Now, it's important for you to educate the customer that the insurance company is only going to offer coverage for drivers that live under the same address. So technically, 2 drivers that live under different addresses may not take advantage of the coverages. The insurance company may not cover the claim if someone that doesn't live under the same address is driving the vehicle. So it's very important to educate the customer that someone that doesn't live under the same address may not have any coverage at all. So setting up a policy separately, a policy for the new driver, may be the solution. Number 6, adding an SR22. Now, anyone that requires an SR22 technically has a suspended license, or it may be in the process of obtaining a temporary license, or simply someone that's on probation, maybe for multiple violations or a major violation like a DUI or reckless driving. So someone that requires an SR22 technically means they possibly just obtained a few tickets. Maybe they just got a few violations that weren't added to the previous policy. So it's important to determine the reason why they need an SR22, and if they have multiple violations or new violations, you may use that to justify that a new policy may be the best solution. Section number 2, adding value to making changes of adding vehicles or changes to the coverages. Now, number 1 within the section, adding a second car liability. So if a customer has one vehicle for liability and he's adding the second one for the same coverages of liability, we're going to requote the situation simply because their current policy may not offer a good multi-car discount. So offering a company that's going to give them a better discount for having multiple vehicles may be the solution. Now, there's going to be situations where they may be paying $70 for one car, adding another car, and may go up to $120, but we may have $90 with a different company. Simply because there's companies that offer different prices, different rates for different situations. Number 2, adding a vehicle for full coverage. So if they're adding a vehicle for full coverage, that's a completely different situation. And one of the options may be to requote them and sell them a new policy simply because we're going to check the database and we're going to choose the lowest company based on the new vehicle, on the vehicle that requires full coverage versus the policy that they had before. So adding a new vehicle for full coverage gives us an opportunity to sell another policy simply because we're able to add a lot of value, simply because the new vehicle is going to require full coverage. So the company is going to cover the value of the car. And the endorsement may not be the best option. So selling another policy may be the best solution. Number 3, adding comprehensive and collision to a vehicle that's already listed on the policy. Now, it depends on the vehicle, the year, make, and model, and the value, but quoting for a potential rewrite may be a solution. Number 4, adding uninsured motorist to all the vehicles. Now, adding uninsured motorist to one vehicle, it may make a difference of $5, $10, $15. Now, if a customer has a policy with 4 vehicles, liability only, and they want to add uninsured motorist, it may go up $30 to $40. So that's more than enough to quote the system, to quote the situation through our system to see if we have something lower. But adding uninsured motorists to all the vehicles, it may be enough to add value when selling or offering a new policy. Now, number 5, removing a car or removing comprehensive and collision. Now, the majority of the time when you remove a vehicle or you're removing coverages, the best option may be just to endorse it and to keep the policy the way it is. But always quote the situation to confirm and guarantee that the option is the best option. Now, if we have something lower with a different company, now that, I'll give you an example. They have 2 vehicles liability, 1 vehicle full coverage. If they want to remove the comprehensive and collision and keep the 3 vehicles liability, we may have a different company that's going to give us a better deal for liability only versus the company that they had, because we're removing those coverages. They're going to give us the rate based on the way they calculate liability. So removing cars, removing coverages is also a good opportunity to quote them to determine if we have something more affordable. And if we do, that's more than enough to offer a new policy. Now, section number 3, the change of zip code or change of address. Now, number 1, if they're changing addresses and they're moving from one city to another city, from one zip code to another zip code, and it's away from Los Angeles, then most likely the rate is going to drop. Or vice versa. Maybe they used to live in Downey, now they live in downtown LA. The rate is going to increase. So every time you make changes on the zip code, on the city, on the address, and if it forces the rate to fluctuate, it's very important to run the information through the database. Now, there's going to be a 70-80% of the time, the endorsement may be the best option, but there's always those 20-30% where we may have something more affordable with the new address. So always check, always confirm, always run the information through the database to determine if we have something lower. And if we have something lower, then that gives us an opportunity to offer a new policy. Now, if they're making changes within the same city, for instance, they're moving from one block to the other block, but it's the same zip code, then most likely there's no possibility of a rewrite. Process the endorsement. So keep in mind, these are the 3 sections when you're going to justify and you're going to add value. Number 1, the type of driver. When you're making changes on the drivers, either adding or deleting drivers. Number 2, when you're adding vehicles or changing coverages. And then number 3, the zip code. So keep that in mind. Always quote the new situation just in case, and also to determine if there's something lower, we could definitely offer a new business.